Welcome to the Find Your Nova show.
A show for aspirational leaders, dreamers, and innovators.
Why don't we kick off by telling them what a nova is?
Oh yeah. Nova is a Latin word for bright star.
Yeah, so over here, we believe that every child is bright in his or her own way.
And all we need to do is find their natural talent, unlock it to its full potential, and grow from there.
So, if innovation, leadership, and cool stuff sounds like your vibe, why not subscribe?
And if you're wondering what we do on this show, well, we engage in Q&A, interviews, fun corner, Nova Finder Compass, and so much more.
Before we move on, let's introduce ourselves.
My name is Julie Sakwa. I'm a Nova Pioneer Alumnus 2020, currently studying BCom at Strathmore University.
And I'm your host, Shakira Makitawa, an alumnus of 2020, doing a marketing internship at Nova Pioneer.
Before we get to introduce today's guest, here's a recap of what you missed in the last episode with Dr. Naf Masharia.
If you want to do two things at a go, or you want to be diverse, it's not going to be easy. You need to put in the effort. Remember I was talking about when I was in high school, I used to play table tennis for my school, and I still used to maintain my good grades. So I started back then. So you put effort. If today you said, I'm going to study this, you put effort into that. If it's practice time, you give your all for that. So that's how I've been able to create this balance.
On today's episode, we have a special guest here in studio with us today, a Kenyan radio presenter,
a social activist,
and a media personality. Guys, put your hands together for the one, the only, Adelle Onyango.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm really excited to have a conversation with you guys today.
I have to tell you this. I'm screaming inside because I'm such a fan.
I appreciate that, and I also have to give you your flowers that at such a young age, what you're doing is commendable. So the inspiration is both ways. Yeah.
Wow. So why don't you get into this? Tell us, who is Adelle Onyango?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so how I answer that question has changed over time. I think there's a huge difference between who you are and what you do. And sometimes you get so caught up in what you do that you forget who you are.
Yeah.
So for me, away from all of those titles, it's very simply put, an evolving African woman. So that gives me the space and the grace to unlearn, to make mistakes, to do better, and still carry like my African identity, my womanhood with me. Let's say tomorrow I want to become a doctor.
Yeah.
I'll still be that evolving African woman. Yeah.
Wow, I really love that.
Such a great
You can borrow it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Keeping that one in the books.
It's all right, we can share.
So where and how did you grow up?
So I am the last born of three girls. So my house growing up was just like many women. And my early years, so primary until about class 7, was here in Kenya. And I went to a school called Loreto Convent Valley Road. And so my childhood was being the last one, I think last ones who watch this will know, you're not the cool kids, the older siblings who want to hang out with you. So you have to be a bit creative about like the games you play, and the neighborhood that we grew up in didn't have too many neighbors. So I'd have to like just do adventures by myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the creative in me was birthed. And so even in school, I think I was more into like languages, more into, at that time, this is gonna make me sound so old, but there's GHC. And so I was, oh my goodness. So geography, history, and civic education, right? And so I only like the H, which is history. Wow, I can't believe there's a generation that doesn't know about GHC. Yeah, so I was more into that, not so good in math. Which I know very many people can identify with. But I think I did 844 in like my primary school until class 7 until I moved to Botswana. And I went to live with my aunt at the time because my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer when I was in class 5. And this was like back in the day, clearly from GHC, this was not last year. And so, so it was when cancer was such a heavy, it's still quite a heavy disease. Yeah. It consumes a lot of finances, emotions, etc. And so it was a very difficult time. And so I went to be with my aunt just so that I could have a stable environment for a few years. And so while I was there, then I switched to IGCSE. I went to a school called Westwood. Mm-hmm. And so that was really cool because now I was interacting with people who were like from different nationalities, believed different things in terms of like religion, because LCVR is a Catholic school. So now you're kind of having a more worldview. And I think that really was an instrumental time contributing to who I am now and what I do. Yeah.
I can't even believe to imagine how hard that must have been.
Yeah.
So tell us, what did the little Adelle aspire to be?
So funnily enough, initially, you have these career classes.
Yeah.
And you have to like tick the things, your interests, right? Yeah. And then it kind of like at the end, based on what you've ticked, shows you what you want, the field you should be getting into. Yeah. Before I started ticking, I always used to go into like, I can't remember, but it was engineering, aeronautical engineer. Oh. Not because I liked math or physics. It just sounded really good. It felt like something like if you walk into a room and you're like, I'm an aeronautical engineer, everybody would be like, she's an aeronautical engineer, Yeah. And so I used to be like, yeah, that sounds good. But every time I'd tick, I would end up in journalism industry, public relations, and I'd be like, but that sounds more,
Better.
And it sounds like more dramatic and cool, and not too many people ever are aeronautical engineers. And so, but that was where I always ended up when I do those career questionnaires. Mm-hmm. And even like growing up, I used to like put on shows for my family, read the news for them from the newspaper, and everybody would have to sit, and I'd be there with like a newspaper and like trying to mimic the news anchors that I would see on telly. And so I guess if you match that like young Adelle and the questionnaires that I was doing, I really was destined to get into like media and things around public relations. Yeah.
Wow.
It's such a diverse educational background. How was your high school experience? Do you have any cool nicknames?
Oh my God, do I have cool nicknames? Maybe not cool. I had a nickname from my best friend at the time. I don't know if it was cool. Yeah. And she still calls me that to date. First, the experience was really good. I moved from an all-girls school to a mixed school. Wow. That's always fun. And then you're in a different country. There's Africans who speak a different language. Yeah. So you're not hearing a lot of Kiswahili, you're hearing a lot of Setswana, so that was great. And I had like a group of friends, like we were a crew of girls, one from Nigeria, one from Botswana, one from South Africa, and one from Zambia. Wow. Yeah, so it was diverse. It was pretty diverse. And so the one from Botswana, her name is Lesang or Nono, and she always used to call me Ads. I don't know what was so hard with just saying Adelle. It's a really short name. But she's like, Ads, and A-D-Z. Oh, so even to date, like when she we still talk. When she like messaged me, she's like, Ads. I was like, oh my goodness, we're in our 30s. Like, what's going on? But yeah, it was, I think I had a good high school experience, and I'm grateful I was around diverse people because it forces you to grow up, and that's me and Nono actually started the school's first magazine, and it was very jovially done, like printed in the library, and like we were there like squashing the pages down so it looks like, and stapling, and you know, doing interviews with like, oh, there was a guy in like a higher class who was a rapper, did an interview with him and stuff like that. And you know, so when I look back, I see that a lot of what I do now, the seeds were planted in high school. That's when I started writing poetry, for example. So it was a great experience, yeah.
I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you end up being in the radio industry?
Oh, by mistake.
For real?
Yes, it was not the plan. It was really not the plan. When I was in university, so I came back from high school and I went to university at USIU here. And I did journalism and psychology. And at the time, I was still writing a lot of poetry because I think like poetry is a beautiful way to express yourself, navigate your emotions, you know?
Yeah.
It's just cool, as much as people don't find it cool.
You find it cool.
You know, I'm always looking at like musicians, like how does it feel to be the favorite form of art? But so in USIU, I met, so I had a cousin in she was a few years ahead of me, who knew I was into poetry. She introduced me to another guy called Albi, who is also really into poetry. And I started performing at like open mics in the university. And then I thought, I could do this. I could have my own open mic. And again, as I told you, I'm not good in math. So I teamed up with my friend who's doing a business course. And we came up with an open mic night. It was really more of her idea. Like she saw the opportunity.
Yeah.
I guess that's why she was studying business. And she said, we could have like open mic hosted by Adele. I'm like, cool, let's do it. And so I understood the branding. Because I'd been doing some performances here and there, I knew poets, I knew musicians. And so we started having a monthly open mic gig. And I remember we had different artists at the time, people like Fena, Elani. Wow. In between the poetry would come and like weave in and do their music. And it was really great. I think we were all just like coming up at that time. So it was I think for Nairobi, it was such an interesting time creatively.
Yeah.
And then the internet was also just starting to pop up. So, I mean, there wasn't Instagram or Twitter, so we only had Facebook. Only. Your reactions to GHC and Facebook are killing me. So, and for Facebook, there was only Facebook groups. There were no Facebook pages.
Oh my
goodness.
And I think that open mic hosted by Adele group is still there because I just don't know how to delete groups. And let's not hate on Facebook, but like I don't spend enough time on Facebook to like understand that. But yeah, so we started it, and through that, USIU had a radio station that they started for their media students. And please remember, as much as I was doing journalism, my concentration was public relations. Because that's really I'd found was where I was fully interested in. And so on one of the radio shows on Saturdays, it was a radio show for deep people.
Okay.
At the time I had dreadlocks and I was like, I'm so in tune with this universe. I mean, I still am now, but like, you know, it was on overdrive back then. And so I was invited to like share my poetry. And back then, please do not react. Back then, Thika Road was 2 lanes, like one going and one, so 2 lanes. So there was tons of traffic. I mean, there's still traffic now, but back then it was hell.
Yeah.
And so the co-host of that show got stuck in traffic and didn't manage to make it for the show. So the guy who was driving the show told me to stay on. And so I stayed on. So I performed my poetry and I just kept talking. And then the next Saturday, he called me back. And the Saturday after that, again, we were deep. It was poetry and like deep vibes.
Yeah.
And he was recording each show on something called a CD. Okay?
At least you know that one.
That one you know. Okay, that's That's good. That's good. Because at least it wasn't a floppy disk.
Yeah.
We all know what a floppy disk is.
We know about
Okay, great. I'm playing with you guys. But yeah, so he was recording them and sending them out to media houses. I did not know this because, again, this was not my plan. I was not trying to get into media. And one of the media houses he sent it to is called 1FM. They've now shut down, but they were in town and they only played African music. And so they got the CD and they gave me a call. And they said, hey, we would like radio presenters. Can you do a radio show?
Yeah.
Of course, I said yes, knowing fully well that I had not studied this thing, but I was like, I mean, how hard can it be, you know?
Yeah.
And so he was like, okay, you need to be in town in the next 30 minutes. Obviously, I was late because Thika Road, 2 lanes. And that's how I got onto my first show, radio show was, you know, outside of being on radio in USIU. Was 1FM, and I got thrown onto the Drive show, which is a peak time show. That's literally how I got into radio.
That's amazing.
Wow, that's like quite the story.
It wasn't the plan, but it became the plan. Yeah.
It's like everything was just aligned from you from when you were younger.
Yes, exactly. Man, the universe. Deep
On your side.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have had quite the years in 2017 and 2018 when you got BBC Women's and OK Africa's Top Women. How did those awards impact your life?
Oh my goodness. I think obviously the first one was BBC 100 Women. I didn't know of the list before I got onto the list, and I was not trying. I think I was just like kind of doing my own thing.
Once again, the
right?
universe.
The universe. And I think that's really important to just like put your head down, focus on what you're passionate about. You just never know who's watching. And then the right energies will be drawn to you and the right people, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, when I remember the BBC one came as an email. I first thought I was being scammed. I was just like, tell me how much, like what is the line for, like send this number of, this amount of money to, I was like, where is that? And there wasn't that. So at first I thought it was like, you are scamming me and I can't see the scam, which means you're really good because where is it? But it ended up not being a scam, obviously. And it was, very powerful, and the OK Africa 100 Women came right after that, and that was also very powerful because at the time I managed to then travel to the States for a conference, and I managed to meet the OK Africa team, and they have quite at the time had quite like very powerful African women who are living in the diaspora, who are trying to figure out identity and trying to amplify the African narrative that side. And so I think the major impact was like just being able to connect with like-minded individuals in completely different countries and continents. And I mean, it does feel good. It kind of validates the work that you're doing. So in the tough times, that's like good fuel to have to be able to say, okay, I do have it in me to be able to achieve A, B, C, D, because I mean, in 2017, if you achieve that, then you can still do it. Yeah. And so that helps in the times when you're having fear, and I go through it, which is fear of the unknown, fear of failure. Like I have paralyzing fear, and you still have to show up and get the work done. Yeah. It helps to know that yes, there were these recognitions, not from a like, oh, look at me, I was on this list, but from a, you can do it. You did it then, you can still keep doing it. I think that's the most important impact those two accolades had. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I love that. And I think we can say that Nova also encourages us to like keep going and keep trying new things.
Very true.
Yeah, it's very important because I think that's how you find yourself. That's how you find your strengths. That's how you find your passion and your purpose as well. Yeah.
That's how you find your inner Nova.
Your inner Nova. Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah. And so what about your initiative, the Adelle Onyango initiative? How did you come about that?
I think it started very Drakali. I always like try and look for like, what is the English
term for Drakali?
There really is none, right? You know, so like it's one of those things that started, I've been very vocal about having survived rape, and that was in 2008. And the years that followed after that, I think I got a lot of anger because I was wondering, this issue is not being talked about. And I wanted to ensure that no other human goes through what I went through. And so there was a lot of anger and just wondering, I'm not seeing it in the news, I'm not seeing policies around it, like what's going on, guys?
Yeah.
And so I remember it initially started off Jua Kali as just me using Facebook again, because y'all, that's
Facebook
all
was
we had,
everything.
okay?
Yes.
And using it to kind of like start the conversation and do advocacy work. And so I opened a group, and I just wanted to hear what was working in other countries. And it's funny, that's how I realized how the internet works, because we'd have people from the UK come in and say, hey, in our clubs, we have these posters to help people if they feel like they're not in a safe space, or we have this hotline, or we've pushed for this policy. And so it started like that. And then with time, it grew to, when I got into therapy, I wanted to be able to ensure that other women and girls got access to therapy. And so then it was just, again, Jua Kali, like calling two counselors I know, can you spare some time? Can you spare some time? And literally using Facebook, DMs, or what did we call them back then? I don't even know. Okay, that, messages.
Yeah.
So if you'd message me as a survivor, I'd connect you to a counselor, right? And then obviously as you grow, you really realize that if you want to run something impactful, the Jua Kali way is not the way to go. There has to be some structures.
Yeah.
And so in 2018, the end of 2018, then all of that Jua Kali work I was doing got put into the structure that is the Adelle Onyango initiative. And initially, because of working on radio and just seeing how very many young people outside of sexual violence is the issue of unemployment, not having the right skills, the skill gap, I wanted to be able to help as well with that. So when we launched, we had the Job Shadow program to connect people who, it doesn't matter if you've not gone to uni, you might have your inner Nova that can actually be grown further if you just get to hang out with a professional in that field. And so that was the Job Shadow program. And then obviously, but my core work is ending sexual violence. So I went back to that and just kind of like created a free group therapy program for women and girls who have survived sexual violence. So I think I say all that to say, like, you may start something and it looks very Jua Kali, and it's just born out of passion or like your own human life story. I don't think, just because it looks like it has no structure, I don't think you should rubbish it. Just keep at it, because you don't know what it could grow to eventually.
True.
Yeah. So that's how that also was birthed. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, your flowers.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for doing that. As a woman, I'd like to say thank you.
You're welcome.
Very empowering.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Wow. You've done so much in your career life, your life, and you probably look back and you're like, wow, that was great. But what are your plans for the future?
Oh my goodness, that's a very interesting question. Sometimes back, I think when I was younger, I was going to say in my 20s, I realized, hey, some people would be like, that's pretty old, sis. No, but, it's a blessing to age. I think when I was younger, the answer to that question would be more along like, I want to build this, and I want to and my legacy, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And with time, I've really come to understand that, like, the things we take for granted, like being at peace, being happy, impacting other people's lives, those are, and by impacting, I mean, even just being kind to another person, you don't know that that's what they needed that day, you know?
Yeah.
And so nowadays, I'm always like, where do I want to be in the future? I want to be surrounded by peace, surrounded by grace. I want to be happy. I want to still have the capacity to be kind to others. And whatever I'll be doing in the middle of all of that, whether it's medicine or, who knows, right?
Yeah.
I want the surroundings to be that, because the older I get, the more I understand that that's really what's important. Yeah.
I think we can establish that peace and grace are your words.
Yup.
And of wisdom.
I say it on my podcast like every single week. I'm just like, peace and grace, guys. Very important. Yeah.
So I think that's all for today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I will give you your flowers to say that, what you're doing at a young age can only result in more power. And to commend you for finding your inner Nova. I don't think there are very many even adults who haven't found that yet. So that you've done so at a young age is commendable. So you gave me my flowers. I'm giving you yours.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I think we can also say that Nova has really helped us find that throughout our years in high school.
Yeah, that's empowering. And to see that you've come back to help start this new show and run the show and you're interning here. I think that just goes to show that there's a huge bond. There's something of value you're getting from Nova. And you're giving back as well. So that's powerful.
Yeah, thank you.
So Adelle, today we have our lovely Novania students in the audience and they have just a few questions for you if you don't mind.
Hey, bring it on.
All right. Yes.
Hi Adelle, my name is Krista. I'm such a big fan and you're such an inspiration to teenage girls around the world and even in Africa. So my question was about your preference. If you like being on radio or in television, which one do you prefer most?
I would have to say audio has my heart, I mean, video is such a huge part of what we do right now with media, be it traditional or new media. But there's something special about your voice, being able to be a companion to someone, being able to just like lift somebody who's having like a hard time, and you're in control of that by yourself. It's also really empowering. So I really love audio. I think that's why I ended up going into podcasting. And no offense to all the cameras in the house.
Yeah. I think we can get another question. Yes.
Hi Adele, my name is Dorothy and your podcast Legally Clueless. I was wondering, why is it a podcast and not a radio or a TV show?
So for me, once I left radio, initially I was going into the NGO world and I was going to like save the world and I was like done in media. And there was a friend of mine who introduced me to the world of podcasting. And initially I thought it would need like tons of money to start because I was thinking with like my traditional media head, like, oh my God, how am I going to get all of the equipment that I need? But once I did my research, I found that the barriers to entry are really low. And it's a very intimate way of engaging with people. So I've found that even through my podcast, there's things that I say that people will stop me and literally ask me, hey, you said you have a performance in 2 weeks. Have you rehearsed? And I'm like, what? Like, you listen? Because like with radio, we had to like repeat because you kind of have us as like background noise. But so that's, I think, why we went into audio to begin with, because it's what I know and it's what I was comfortable with. But obviously the podcast has grown to be its own platform. And so now we have the video series, which is its own show with 3 seasons, the tour series. So when we go on the road to various places, that's on video as well. And I love those. But like where I spend like a lot of my energy is in our audio episodes. And I think for Africans and even for young people like you, I don't think we, and I say we because I'm like grouping myself with you guys. I don't think we need to wait until like you graduate, until like you get access to do an internship at KISS, et cetera. Things have changed where you can use your phone to start a podcast. You can use your phone to start creating video content. And that wasn't the case for Africans even just, 6 years ago? So we have an opportunity to be able to tell our stories in an uncensored, unbiased way, to talk about issues that we are passionate about in a way that we want to, and on platforms that are ours. And for me, Legally Clueless, that's our ethos, is to be able to be that space that, yes, it's okay not to know, it's okay to be human, but deeper than that, is to connect Africans so that when you're in Nairobi even, you understand somebody who lives in Kisumu better through their story. That's why we did the tour. When you're in Harare, which is one of the places we went to, and you listen to a story by an African in Paris, which is a place we went to, you start understanding what does that dynamic look like, you know? What are some of the issues they face that are similar to yours? And so for me, you know, the podcast, it started as an audio podcast, but really it's grown to be a platform. And it goes back to what I said earlier on about Jua Kali things. So you start something Jua Kali because it's just like, oh, I think I dig this thing. Let's see how it goes. And don't give up on it no matter how haphazard it looks, because who knew 3 years down the line it would grow to be a platform and not just a podcast. So just start whatever it is that you want to do, yeah.
I think it's important that you teach people how that they don't need to have all this big equipment, so much money to start up something they're really passionate about, because, you know, most Kenyans are like, or most Africans are like, oh man, I don't have the money or the funds. Start small with just a simple phone and a camera.
That's true. And the hardest bits are not that. The hardest bit is like consistency, hard work, upskilling yourself, signing up for all of those free classes to increase, you know, improve how you do things. That's the hard bit, because we always think like, we know it all. But you have to kind of like remain teachable, especially when you start your own thing. Yeah.
I want to give you a big thank you for joining us today on set. You've been such a great interviewee, and I am just so happy to hear from you. You've been such an inspiration.
Thanks for having me, and you guys are doing amazing. And I should know, this is something that I've done, so it's not just a compliment, it's real. You're doing a really good job.
Thank you
so much.
So we can wrap up?
Wait. I have a gift for you. Can someone give me my bag, please?
Oh my goodness, like, did you get like cheat notes? I love gifts. Like, you could wrap a spoon and I would be happy.
Here it is.
Oh my goodness, the van! Oh my God, you have to come down for a hug. Oh my word.
Yeah.
This is so beautiful. This is the van from our tour title sequence.
Yes, it is.
Did you paint this?
Yeah, I did.
What?
Yeah. And I listened to you as I was.
Wow.
This is so good. This is so good. This is going up in my office. Like, every time I'm working, I'm going to, and it has obviously our colors. So. This is like the kindest thing ever. I'm really so touched. There's a card.
Yeah, that's for later.
Yes, if I open it and I start crying, my eyelashes might like drop off. So this is so kind. And we have free Wi-Fi. Our van didn't have Wi-Fi. Next tour season we will. Oh, thank you so much. Okay, I will always remember Nova. And I will always remember you,
You're
Shakira.
welcome.
Yeah.
And that's all we have for today's show.
Be sure to subscribe, share, and tune in to the next episode of the Find Your Nova show.
Till then, see you on The Brighter Side.